All right, so here we go. We're continuing the 5.3 to 5.5 notes. In class, I did go over these first two, but I want to revisit them just so we make sure everybody's on track. All right, so this is factoring now with the leading coefficient. So now we have an A up here. It's not going to be a 1 like we were when we were factoring before. So now, when there's not a 1 out front, what we're going to do is, as soon as we see that leading coefficient is not a 1, we're going to make our box. All right, and in the top side of each box, we're just going to take our first term, but we're going to leave off the squared. So we're going to write up in the top of each box 3x and 3x. All right, then we're going to multiply 3 times the 2. So it's the first term, our leading coefficient, times our last term. And that gives us 6. And then what we want to do is we want to find our factors of 6, that when we add them, we get a 7. And the factors of 6, that when we add them and get a 7, are 6 times 1. And what we're going to do is we're going to take those factors and we're going to write them in the bottom of this box. So we're going to write the 6 and the 1. All right? Now, what we want to do is, again, we're going to get the signs, but it's the same as when there wasn't a leading coefficient. So we're going to go, if we see the last sign and it's a plus sign, that means the signs are the same, and they're both going to be whatever our middle sign is. So we're going to put a plus for both of these. All right, now what we're going to do is we're going to group these first two together. So up and down in the box, the top and the bottom. So that gives us 3x plus 6. But what we're going to do is we're going to see if we can factor anything out of that first. And in this case, we can factor a 3 out. So when we divide the 3 by 3, it goes away, or it becomes a 1. And then we divide the 6 by 3, and that gives us a 2. So what we're left with is x plus 2. So we're going to write that, x plus 2. And then we go to the second part. We circle these two, the top and the bottom, and we can't factor anything out of that, so we just write it down. 3x plus 1. And now we factored that out. All right, so now we're going to factor this one out. So again, we're doing B. We have a leading coefficient. So as soon as we see that leading coefficient, again, we're going to do our box. And we're going to take our first term, drop off the square. Again, don't bring the square with it, just the 3x, and write it in the top of each one. Then we're going to multiply first times last, which gives us 24. And now we want to find the factors of 24 that when we add them up, we get a 10. All right? So the factors of 24, when we add them up and we get a 10, are 6 times 4. Because 6 times 4 gives us 24, and then 6 plus 4 gives us 10. So now we're going to take our 6 and our 4, and we're going to write them in the box, in the bottom boxes. All right? Again, the last sign's a plus sign, so that tells us our signs are the same. This time, they're both going to be minus signs. So a minus and a minus. All right? Then again, we take our top and our bottom here, and we see if we can factor anything out of it. Well, we can factor a 3 out of both of these. So this 3 goes away or becomes a 1. And then this 6 divided by 3 gives us a 2. So we're left with x minus 2. So that we're going to put that in our first parenthesis, x minus 2. All right, then we take the other 2. All right, we have 3x minus 4. Can we factor anything out of that? And the answer is no. So we're just going to keep it just like it is. So we're going to keep that as 3x minus 4. And that's how you factor it out with the leading coefficient. All right, so now we're going to go to our next one. All right, and this one Again, same thing, we have a leading coefficient, so we have to do our box. On the top, we're going to put a 4x and a 4x. We're going to multiply 4 times 9, which gives us 36. Now we want the factors of 36. This time, when we subtract them, because the last time is a minus sign, we get a 16. Well, the factors of 36, that when you subtract them, you get a 16, are 18 times 2. So we're going to put that in the bottom. 18 in the bottom of one, and a 2 in the bottom of the other. This time, the last time sign is a negative, so that means our signs are going to be different. And remember what our rule is. When the signs are different, we're going to take the bigger sign, the bigger number, and it's going to get whatever our middle sign is. So 18 is bigger than 2, so 18 is going to get the negative, and 2 is going to get the positive. All right, then we group them together again, and we got 4x minus 18, and they're both divisible by 2. So we divide them both by 2, and this will become 2x, and this becomes a negative 9. So we're left with 2x minus 9. All right, and then the same thing here. We have 4x plus 2, but they're both divisible by 2. So 4 divided by 2 leaves us with a 2x. And then 2 divided by 2 gives us a positive 1. So we got 2x plus 1. So 2x plus 1. And that's how we factor that out. All right, and then we have the next one. And again, we're going to factor this out. So again, we have a leading coefficient, so we know we're going to do the box. So we do our box. Put a 6x in the top of each side. All right, and then we multiply. 6 times 15, which gives us 90. And now we need to find the factors of 90, that when we subtract it, we get a 1. And the factors of 90, that when we subtract it, we get a 1, are 9 times 10. Okay? So we're going to take our 9 and our 10, and we're going to put them in the bottom of each one. Again, we go to our last sign. Our last sign is a negative, so that means the signs are different. The middle sign's plus, so again, our bigger number has to get that plus sign. So the 10's bigger than 9, so the 10 gets a plus, the 9 gets the minus. All right, then we group these two together, and we're going to say, okay, can we factor anything out of this? And these are both divisible by 3. So if I divide this one by 3, I'm left with 2x. I divide this one by 3, and I'm left with a negative 3. So I have 2x minus 3 is what I'm left with. All right, and then we do the same thing with these two. 6x and 10, we can divide those both by 2. I divide this 6x by 2, it leaves me with 3x. I divide this positive 10 by 2, and it leaves me with a positive 5. So I'm left with 3x plus 5. So that'll go in my other set of parentheses. And that's how you factor them out when you have a leading coefficient. All right, so it's a leading coefficient, it's a little bit harder. All right, so now what I want you to do is pause the video right now, and then I want you to do the checkpoint. So I'll give you a couple seconds to pause the video, because I'm going to continue working, but I want you to stop and try doing it on your own. All right, so our first one, here we go. Again, we have leading coefficient, so we do our little box. We put a 2x in the top of each one. Multiply 2 times 5 gives us 10. We want the factors of 10. When we add them, we get an 11. And that would be 10 times 1. So 10 goes in the bottom of 1, 1 goes in the bottom. Last sign's a plus sign, so the signs are the same, and they are both plus. So plus and plus. The 2x plus 10, we can divide those both by 2. That leaves us with an x, and this leaves us with a positive 5. So we have x plus 5. And then the 2x plus 1, we can't factor out anything, so we just write down 2x plus 1. All right, then our next one. Again, leading coefficient. So we do our box, put in the top 2y and 2y. Multiply 2 times 7 gives us 14. We want the factors of 14, that when we add them up, we get a 9, and that would be 2 times 7. So in our box, we'll put bottom, we put 2 and a 7. Signs are both the same because the last sign's a plus, and they're both going to be plus. So plus and plus. This one, we could factor a 2 out of it, so it leaves me with a y, and the bottom leaves me with plus 1. So we get y plus 1. The other side, group those two together, 2y plus 7. I can't factor anything out of it, so I just write it down. 2y plus 7. All right, and then our last one. All right, for our checkpoint, again, we have a leading coefficient. So right away, I know I'm doing my box. Put a 3r in the top of each. Multiply. 3 times 5 gives me 15. And we want the factors of 15, that when we add it, remember that last sign tells you what operation you're doing, you're going to get an 8. Well, 3 times 5 gives us 15, and 3 plus 5 gives us the 8. So it's going to be a 3 and a 5. So we put in here a 3 and a 5. And again, last sign's a plus sign. Tells us also that signs are going to be the same, and they're both going to be whatever our middle sign is. In this case, they're both a plus. So we put a plus here and a plus there. Group the first side together, the front side, and we got 3r plus 3. Well, they're both divisible by 3, so we divide them by 3. This leaves us with r, and then the bottom a plus 1. So we're left with r plus 1. And then in the other side, 3r plus 5. We can't factor anything out of it, so we just write it down. 3r plus 5. And that's how you factor with leading coefficients. All right, so I'm going to stop right there, and what I want you to do is you're going to do the homework. The homework is going to be your 5.4 practice A, and you're just going to do that first column. So you're going to do problems 1 all the way down to 25. Now remember, the top ones, all you're doing is factoring. The bottom ones, you got to factor them out, and then you're going to solve them. So remember, once you factor them out, you set them each equal to 0, and you solve. So I want you to do that, and in the next video, I'll have all the answers and the work for all those problems.